Lesson 2. Functions. Functions. Excel functions are predefined programs that return a result based on user inputs known as arguments. Each function name is capitalized and contains arguments within parentheses. Excel has over 100 built-in functions, including AutoSum, logical, text, and mathematical categories. As part of inserting a function, you must enter arguments. An argument is typically a number or text value, although a cell or cell range can also be used. Some functions may require only one argument or no argument at all. Inserting functions. There are three ways a user can insert a function. Use the Insert Function button, located here near the formula bar, or by using the commands on the Formulas tab, Function Library, or by manually entering in to a cell or formula a function name. You can enter a function into a cell by itself or add a function to an existing formula. So for example, in cell B5 I have a function, there is a function by itself, and in cell C5 it's part of a larger formula. The function is part of a larger formula. Insert Function button. To insert a function using the Insert Function button, click on the cell that you want to insert into and then click on the Insert Function button located here. This will launch the Insert Function dialog box. Here you can enter a brief description of the type of function you're looking for, or you can use the category drop-down. Select the category, which will display the related functions for that category. And you can click on a function here to see a description below. Once you've found your function, you can double click or click OK. This will bring up the function arguments dialog box. Here you need to enter in your function's arguments. Here in this dialog box you can see again what the function is used for here, and then a description of the arguments. So in the average function, it's only taking numbers as arguments. And again, you can type in a number for an argument, or you can use a cell reference that is a number. You can see that E4 is a cell reference and it equals 2. And when you enter your arguments, you'll see the result of the function here. Once you're done inputting your arguments, click OK to see the result of your function. And if you go to the formula bar, you'll see the function displayed. Again, it's all in capital letters. And then you see the arguments within the parentheses separated by a comma. And by the way, you can bring up your Insert Function dialog box anytime by typing Shift F3, keyboard shortcut. So you can type in Shift F3 or you can click on the Insert Function button. Either way will get you to the Insert Function dialog box. You can also insert a function by using the Function Library. Again, click on a cell that you want to insert the function into, and then go to the Formulas tab. Click on the cell you want to insert the function into, and then go to the Formulas tab, Function Library group. Choose from among the categories such as AutoSum, recently used functions, financial, etc. and then scroll down on the list. As you scroll over a function, you'll see an example of what the function is used for. Click on the function. Enter into the function arguments dialog box the required functions, and then click OK. And finally, the way to insert a function is by manual input. Type in equals to start your function, and then type in the name. And you'll notice again that when I start typing in a text value, so in this case, when I start typing in C, all the names and all the functions with C that start with C will be displayed. And since I want to use the count function, I type in OU and then count is displayed. I double click it, and then the next step to choose it, and then click on the insert function button, which will bring up the arguments dialog box. Enter the required arguments and then click OK. Editing a function. To view and edit a function's arguments, click on the cell that contains the function. Then simply click on the insert function button, which will bring up your function arguments dialog box. Edit the arguments accordingly and then click OK. AutoSum. The AutoSum feature allows you to run a simple function such as sum, average, etc. on a cell range with just one click. To use AutoSum, select the range of cells that you want to apply the AutoSum function to. Either select the range or click the cell below it, or if it's horizontal range, select the range or click to the cell to the right of the range. Then go to the Home tab, Editing Group, and then click on AutoSum. Choose the function that you want to insert. Since I clicked on the cell to the right of the range, Excel will highlight the range immediately to the left of the cell. Format the range, edit the range accordingly. In this case, that's exactly the range I want. So next step would be to press enter. The other way to use AutoSum is to select the range. Go back to the editing group, AutoSum, and then click on the function. You can see that in this case there was no range highlighted, since I already had highlighted the range. Just the result of the function, which uses the highlighted range, is displayed. And instead of using AutoSum on the editing group, I could have used AutoSum in the Formulas tab, Function Library. And the shortcut to use AutoSum is hold down the Alt key and hit equals. However, just take note that that shortcut for AutoSum only works with the sum function. Viewing AutoSum functions on the status bar. AutoSum function results are also available via the status bar found at the bottom of Excel here. To see the results of AutoSum functions on the status bar, scroll over the range of the cells and you'll notice that the functions are displayed below. So if I only do it for the values 2 and 17, you can see with the average, the count, minimum number, which is the lowest number in the list, 2, maximum number, 17, and the sum, 2 plus 17, which is 19. So as I add the arguments, the function results will change. And you can customize what function results are displayed by right-clicking on the status bar and then checking or unchecking what you want displayed. So let's say I only want to display average and count. I would uncheck min, max, and sum. So only average and count are displayed. If I want to see them again, I would recheck. And just a brief example of some of the AutoSum functions. So let's say I have a data table here. Represents monthly sales for 5 departments across 3 different stores. I have 2 different tables. This one to the right that displays 6-month summary of the sales. That displays a 6-month summary by department. I have this table here that displays 6-month summary by department, and then I have another one down below that represents the monthly summary for all departments. And I've applied certain AutoSum functions such as count, sum, average, max, and min. So for example, the count across this range is 6, meaning that there are 6 values, which corresponds to 6 months of data. Then I have the sum of the sales across those 6 months for that department, electronics. Then I have the average for that department over those 6 months. And then I have the max number of sales and the min number of sales. And then what I did is I copied down those formulas to the last row. So then I have data displayed for each department. So looking at this data table, I can quickly see which department had the best sales over 6 months, which was department 20. Then I can also see, for example, which department had the best month and the worst month. So the best month again belongs to department 20, and the worst month belongs to department 30. And then down over here in this table I have the summary for each month across all departments. So this is more of a company-wide perspective since it includes all departments. So I can quickly tell which month was the company's best in terms of sales, and that was March. And I can likewise see which month was the worst in sales, January. And I can also see which month was the highest and the lowest. Math and trig functions, which can be found in the function library here or from the Insert Functions dialog box here. As you can see, there are quite a number of math and trig functions. A few of the more common ones are the SUMIF and the round. So if I click on the cell that has that function, that contains that function, and then the insert function dialog box, you'll see that the SUMIF function is made up of 3 arguments: the range, the criteria, and the sum range. So what the SUMIF function does is it adds the cells specified by a given condition or criteria. Or to put it in simpler terms, it sums the numbers in a range when a condition is met in another range. Only the numbers that meet the criteria in the range are summed up in the other range. So for example, here I have entered the range L6, L10. Which corresponds to this range here. The criteria is 2, and the sum range is Q6 through Q10, which is over here. It's the month of April. So what this function is saying is, look within the range L6 through L10 here. Find 2, so store number 2, and when that criteria is met, sum the corresponding cells in range Q. So in this example, it's going to find 2 twice. It's going to find store 2 in cell L8 and then L9. And when it does, it's going to go over and look in this range here, the sum range. And it's going to find the corresponding cells that match to that row. So it's going to find 1016 for this row, and then 1135 for this row. And it's going to sum them together, resulting in 2151, which is exactly what is displaying in that cell with the function. So again, the function is looking in the criteria range specified here for 2. And when it finds it, it's going to sum up only those cells that it corresponds to in the sum range, which was 1016 and 1135. And it's ignoring all the other cells in the range because they did not meet that criteria. Again, that's known as a SUMIF function. Another pretty common math and trig function is the round. So if I go back over to the insert function button, you can see the arguments of that function and what it's used for, what the function is used for. Round is used to round a number to a specified number of digits. So the first argument is the number you want to round, and the second argument is the precision, so how many digits that you want to round to. In this case, I am rounding the number found in cell N6 here to 1 decimal place. And if you look in the formula bar, you'll see that the number has 2 decimal places, 55. So when I round it to just 1, it's going to round to 6, which is the case here. Next, we have statistical functions, which can be found on the Formulas tab function library. More functions drop down here. Or again by the insert function dialog box, statistical category. You'll notice that some of the functions found in AutoSum, such as the sum, average, count, etc., are also found under more functions, statistical. You have the average and count, and also max and min. For some reason, sum isn't included. A few of the more common statistical functions include the AVERAGEIF, which is similar to the SUMIF that I mentioned previously, only instead of summing cells that meet the criteria, you are averaging them together. So in this example, the range I'm looking in is the same, L6 through L10, the stores. And in this case I'm looking for 1 and 3, which, as you can see, that criteria is met 3 times. This time the range I am going to average is in January. So 3 rows meet that criteria, and their corresponding values in the average range will be averaged together. The result I'm looking for is 1174, and that is exactly the result that is being shown. Another common one is COUNTIF, which, just like SUMIF and AVERAGEIF, only there is no COUNTIF range. So you notice that in the AVERAGEIF and SUMIF there's a third argument, the average range or the sum range. But in COUNTIF there is no count range, since it's counting the whole range. So for example, it's going to count basically how many cells in the range meet the criteria 1 and 3, and the result is 3. 1, 2, 3. And finally, another common statistical function is median, which will return the number in the middle of a set of given numbers. In this example, I selected N8 through S8. So basically this row here. And the middle number within that range of numbers is 1017. Lookup and reference functions, which again can be found by going to the insert function and choosing the category lookup and reference, or by going to the function library and choosing lookup and reference. Some of the more common functions in the lookup and reference category include the VLOOKUP, which has 4 arguments. The VLOOKUP returns a value from a table's column based on lookup value in the first column. So for example, the first argument is the value that you want to look up. The second argument is a table array, which is the set of data that you're looking in. Column index number argument is the column you want to return when your lookup value is found. And then the range lookup is a logical value. If you want to find the closest match to your lookup value, use true or blank. Or if you want to find an exact match, then you have to type in false or 0, which equates to false. So for example, my lookup value is 50 and I'm looking in K6 through M10. So K6 through M10 is this here, this table. So when it finds the value 50 in the first column, which it will on this row here, I'm telling the function that I want to return the value in the third column of that table. And this fourth argument is saying that I want an exact match. And you can see the result is going to be children, which is what I expect. And again, you can click into any of the argument boxes to get a description of what the argument is. So again, in this example, I had the table highlighted here, and then I input the value to look up as 50, and then I told Excel, once 50 is found, return the value in the third column of the table, which would be children. And again, that's known as the VLOOKUP. Another common lookup and reference function is the HLOOKUP, which is very similar to the VLOOKUP. You supply a value that you're looking up in the first argument, and then you set up your table array in the second argument. And in the third argument, instead of supplying the column you want to return, you're supplying the row that you want to return. So in this example, I'm looking for May 2014, and I'm looking in the table NS through S10, which is the monthly sales table. Once I find May 2014, which can be found here in column R, I'm telling Excel that I want to return the value in row 5, which will be this one here. And you can see that is the result of the function. Again, the HLOOKUP function is looking up in this table highlighted the value May 2014, which it finds here. And then I tell Excel to return the value in the 5th row, which is this one here, 1138. So again, it's very similar to the VLOOKUP. Instead of a vertical lookup, it's a horizontal lookup. And finally, there's the index function, which will return a value or reference of a cell at the intersection of a row and column combination given. So the first argument in the index function is array, which is basically your table array. So in this example I'm using N6 through S10, which again is the sales table, but this time I'm excluding the months heading. The row number I want is number 4 and the column is 2. So in this range here, this table array, I want row number 4, which is this row. And within this row I want to return the second column. The value that will result from this function will be 1117. And that's an example of the index function. Text functions. Some of the more common text functions include left, which returns the characters of a word starting from the left. So your first argument is the word that you want to return the characters from, and the second argument is the number of characters. So in this example I selected the word in cell M8, which is household, and then I'm telling Excel that I want to return the first 5 characters from the left, which would equate to house. Mid is very similar, except that you're telling Excel where you want to start within the word. So your second argument is the start number, or the starting position, which is the third character, which would be U. The first is H, the second is O, and the third is U. And then you're telling it how many numbers you want to return. So when I enter 3 here, it's going to return the 3 letters starting from U, which would be U, S, and then E. And right is similar to left, except that you're starting from the right side of the word. So when I specify 4 characters to return, it's going to return the last 4 characters. So the left, mid, and right functions are very useful text functions to use to separate out text from within a word. Lower is used to convert all your letters in a word to lowercase. So in this case, it only takes one argument, and that's the word that you want to convert to lowercase. Electronics, which starts with E, and when I apply that function, the E turns to lowercase. Upper is similar to lower, except that it converts all the letters to uppercase. And then trim, which only takes one argument. We'll trim all the leading spaces. So it's taking the text in P34, which has a few spaces leading, leading spaces, and it's removing them. The only spaces it won't trim are ones in between words. Another useful text function is the CONCATENATE function, which will allow you to merge text and number values together to form one text value. So in this example, I added K5, cell K5, which is department number, and then I add a space. And the way to add a space is to add a quotation mark and then a space and then another quotation mark, so that Excel knows it's a text value, and then just have the space within those quotation marks. Then I added K10, which is 50. Then I added the text value is with a space on either side. And then I added the cell value M10, which equates to children. The result of that concatenate function is a text value department number 50 is children. And by the way, you can also use the concatenation operator. And I'll show you an example of that real quick. Concatenation operator is the ampersand symbol. Every time you're combining a value, you need to use that ampersand symbol. So using the ampersand symbol, which is the concatenation operator, or in other words, it's the operator used for concatenation, I can come up with the same text value as I did with the concatenate function. Date and time functions. Which can be found here. Some of the more common date and time functions include today, which will give you the today's date. Now, which will give you the date and time, the current date and time. And then day, which will return the day, and month, the month. For both the today and the now functions, no argument is needed. So pretty straightforward. You want to have a function that returns today's date, or date and time, or day of the month, or month. You would just use one of these. Finally, we have the logical functions. Some of the more common logical functions include if. And the if function consists of 3 arguments. The first argument is a logical test. The second one is a value to return if the logical test equates to being true. And then the final argument is the value to return if the test ends up being false. So in this example, I'm testing the cell N6 and comparing it to N7, and the test is N6 is greater than N7, which it is not. Therefore, the value of false is returned. Clothing had the better month. Again, it's comparing N6 and N7. And you can clearly see that N6 is less than N7. And therefore, the value of false is returned. Otherwise, if it was true, the value of true value would be returned. So a very useful logical function. one that you'll probably come across a lot. Next, there's the if error, which checks a value, and if there's an error that returns from the value, you can specify the value to return. So in this example, I'm looking at the value K6 through L6 right here. And Excel doesn't understand what that means. So therefore it's returning an error. And since it's returning an error, the value of error is returned. So I can easily change what's returned when there's an error. The AND function will return true if all the arguments are true. Otherwise, false is returned. So it's not enough for just one of the arguments to be true. Every argument must be true. Otherwise, false is returned. So in this example, the first argument evaluates true, but the second one returns false. Therefore, the whole function returns false, since both must be true in order for it to be true. Or on the other hand, allows the fact that one can be true and the other one false. It's basically saying that the function should return true if this argument is true, or if the other one is true. So if either one is true, it will return true. And finally, the topic of function nesting. It's possible for functions to be nested within other functions, as can be shown here. I have a couple of sum functions nested within an if function. And in example 2, I have an if function nested within another if function. The concept of function nesting means that the result of one function becomes an argument to another function. With function nesting, the inner functions are evaluated first, and then the outer functions are evaluated. So for example, the result of the inner if function becomes the second argument to the outer function. Assuming that W6 is greater than W9 here, W6 will be returned. And then that becomes the second argument to the outer if statement. So that the outer if statement becomes, if W6 is greater than W8, return W6, which again was the result of the inner if function. Otherwise, return W8. And that concludes lesson 2.